Welcome to the Houndsman XP podcast, and we have got a exciting show for you today. We've got Steve Fielder on the line, of course, and we've got Chris Todd from Kingman, Arizona. How are you today, Steve?
Chris, I can't say that I've ever been any better. I've been looking forward to this podcast for quite a while. This is a guy that I kind of went out there and rooted out of the pages of Facebook and watched his videos and read his stories. And I said, man, if we can lasso this thing, we'll have a great show. And so I'm really doing good down here and looking forward to our program today with Chris Todd.
Well, you may not be doing any better today, but you've definitely been better looking, Steve. I can tell you that.
You know, Todd, I have to put up with this all the time. He told me the other day that I had a great face for radio. Now, can you imagine? When I was raised, these younger guys were expected to be seen and not heard, but I can't. I don't know. I can't make excuses for him. He's just the best I've got. So it's kind of like a hound,
Yeah.
No, Chris and I go back a long time. We have a great time together, and of course, all part of that is giving each other a hard time. But it sure is good to have you on board today with us, Chris. And this is going to get confusing for the listeners, and I may call you Todd from time to time, just to make sure that Chris Powell doesn't jump in and grab your line or whatever.
No doubt. I saw that review on Facebook the other day where the game warden needs to talk less. So
I thought that one made my day. I'm telling you. So, some guy said he really enjoyed the podcast, but the game warden needs to talk. Try to see if you can get the game warden to talk less. I thought that was pretty funny. But
yep. Well, Steve, I'm going to hand this off to you and let you run with it. You lassoed this extreme houndsman in here and talked him into being on the podcast, so I'm going to let you run with this one. Well, I'll just chime in when I need to.
Okay, buddy. Well, it's great when you can pick up the phone and call somebody that you've never spoken to before and find a person that's just very welcoming and ready to talk. And I think that's pretty much describes most of us in this hound fraternity. We like to talk dogs. We like to meet other hunters. And this podcast has really been great in that respect. And so I called up Chris Todd. I don't know that he ever heard of me. And he was very willing to talk. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation today, Chris. What I'd like for you to do for our listeners is just tell us a little bit about who Chris Todd is, where you're from, where you are now, how you got there, kind of thing. Just a little background information, if you don't mind.
Okay. Well, I was born in Dayton, Ohio, so a long way from where I'm at right now in Kingman, Arizona. But my family moved. Actually, we spent a year in L.A., and thankfully we moved over here to Arizona after a year in L.A. And as a young man or young kid, my dad and mom took me hunting all the time. I mean, we hunted everything. And up until I was I was a senior in high school, I never really thought a whole lot about hunting with hounds. And I had two real good friends in high school that are still real good friends of mine, and they're still really good line hunters to this day. And we all, we got together and started line hunting, and I caught my first line, or actually seen my first line there when I was a senior in high school, and it just took off from there, and I don't know, it just grew and grew from there, and pretty soon I didn't care if I hunted anything but hunted mountain lions and hunted with dogs. And of course we did at that time, we raccoon hunted quite a bit, and I was never any kind of a bear hunter, but we did a lot of raccoon hunting, and gradually I phased that out and just got to where the only thing I wanted to do was chase mountain lions.
Well,
and,
you know, well, my experience with lion hunting has been in the pages of some really good books. Read the Ranch Hounds by Dub Evans. Read books by like Montague Stevens. I read the Lee brothers books. I read books by Ozzie Washburn. Different people down through the years that and read these great stories of lion hunting with hounds on horseback, and the pictures, mental pictures that these writers were able to create were just fascinating to me. And I think that's one of the things that drew me to contacting you was the stories that you were telling. Let me back up there just a little bit. Which came first for you, the lion hunting or the coon hunting?
Actually, the coon hunting did. That was first, and I got to say I really enjoyed it. I mean, I loved it. I mean, it was great. But after line hunting a while, seeing some lines, that just nothing else mattered to me. That was it. And you're talking about, the great writers and stuff of books, Del Lee in particular. When I was young, I was probably 20 years old. We'd done some snow hunting, and me and a buddy were out snow hunting one day, and we hadn't found nothing. We went by a store in Cordes Junction, which is a little town there in central Arizona, and there was an article in Outdoor Life promoting Del Lee's book. And I read that. And actually, I was driving, and my friend, he kept wanting to take the wheel. He's like, well, you need to read that so bad. He said, well, won't you let me drive? I'm like, oh, no, I'm okay. And
hey, it sounds like my wife when I'm looking at my phone when I'm driving. She said she reaches over and grabs it and takes it away from me. So.
Yeah, and the thing for me was I read that, and of course I'd heard of George Goswick and Giles Goswick. They were just the best lion hunters in the state of Arizona. And I just always thought, because we snow hunted, that's how I got my start. And we caught lions in the snow. And I just always thought, how the heck are these guys going out on a horse, turning their dogs loose, and going out in the mountains and finding a lion and catching it? And I just thought, I don't understand that, how you can do that. Well, there were a lot of people doing it naturally, but for me, and the guys I knew, we were all snow hunters, and I just couldn't fathom being able to do that, and so after reading that with Del Lee, I was like, that's what I got to do. I got to do that. I got to figure out how to do this. And it went on from there, Well,
the Lee brothers hunted mostly down towards Tucson, or that's where their home base was anyway. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Actually, Clell Lee had a ranch later over in the Alpine area. And then Dale, his home was in the Tucson area. But, yeah, as far as Arizona is concerned, they did hunt that southern Arizona quite a bit.
Now, didn't they hunt, or at one time was not Dale's address Blue, Arizona?
Yeah, right by Alpine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
With Clell.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, so you were coon hunting as a young man. How old were you at that stage in your life, Chris?
I think the last time I went coon hunting, I was probably around about 25, somewhere in that neighborhood.
I got you. And what kind of dogs were you hunting on coon at that time?
Well, I had a variety, but, I started out, I didn't know what I had when I was young. Yeah, and I spent 27 years working for AT&T. So I just always didn't have the time to really breed dogs. And I look back on it now, and I could kill myself because I made friends with Bobby Reeves was his name. He was real good friends with the Goswicks. And so I got some dogs through him. And he also had some of Dale Lee's, or actually Clell Lee's stuff. Later, some of Dale Lee's dogs, and I got dogs from him out of that. And I coon hunted with those dogs too, and some of them were really good coon dogs. And I just never bred those dogs because I just didn't I didn't have the time, basically. I was working full time and had a family to support, so I just didn't have the time to worry about breeding dogs. And like I say, I look back on it now and just kick myself, all the bloodline that I let go, that I never really bred. And some of the, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say some of those were really good coon dogs. I had one that was about 3/4 the old Goswick blood that was called Bonaparte. Bonaparte came from Bobby Reeves, and Bobby had him on about 30 lines. And I got him, and he caught a bunch of lines for me, and he ended up getting killed by a line, which was, that was a rough day there. But anyway, he was the best coon dog I've ever hunted with in my life. And I was hunting with guys that had good coon dogs. And, I mean, he would catch coons out in front of dogs. You just run off and leave dogs and treat coons like you just wouldn't believe. He was a super dog, And he was just really good. And then my Spike dog that I talked a little bit about on Facebook, he came right after that, and that's in the neighborhood of when I quit coon hunting altogether. But Spike was the same. He was from Bobby Reeves with a lot of that Goswick blood, and just a super dog. Dogs.
Okay, there's so many questions here that I have.
Okay.
Goswick, tell me more about them, who they were, where they were from, and just kind of give our listeners. We get a lot of requests, especially from people back east, Chris, that want to know more about this Western hunting. And they, like I did with reading the stories, find it very fascinating. So for their benefit and mine, I'd like to hear more about some of these old lines of dogs and these breeders.
Well, now, Giles Goswick was George's dad, and Giles, and his brother established a ranch in Mayer, Arizona. And when they did that, they were right on the base of the Bradshaw Mountains. Well, they had a terrible time with lions there, killing calves like crazy. So this was back in the late 1800s, and they developed a strain of dogs there to catch lions in that country. And George continued that until his death, which I'm not sure when George passed. It was like, I'm probably wrong about this, around the 1990s, And so those dogs were developed specifically for catching lion in Arizona, in dry, tough conditions. And, they definitely did the job, really did the job well. And actually, if you look through records, records that are kept by, the state of Arizona, Giles caught more lions than anybody in the state of Arizona, period. Back when they paid bounty on him, he was top guy, and so, it was they were just another family that developed hounds for that. There's also the Glens, the Lee brothers. The Lee brothers, didn't really have that much of a strain of dogs as the Goswicks did. They had their own strain of dogs, and that's all they wanted. That was that strain of dogs, period. They wouldn't hunt nothing else. So
did they breed true? Did they breed true to type? I mean, could you look at a dog and tell that it was a Goswick bred dog?
Not really, no, because a lot of these dogs out here, from one family of dogs to the other, a lot of them are red tick, blue tick type dogs, and a lot of them just look a lot alike. I mean, look wise, to look at them, you put from one strain to the next, it's pretty hard to tell them apart.
I see.
As far as just looking at them.
Okay, now you were going to say next, besides the Goswicks, were you going to mention another family of dogs there, or family of hunters, or did I?
Well, no. I just did. I did mention, the Glens. They did their own thing. Marvin and Warner, they did their own thing. They're in Douglas, Arizona, far south Arizona, and that's all I was saying. Different families, or really ranching families, developed strains of dogs to hunt in their country to catch, cattle killing mountain lions, basically.
Very interesting. Well, so hey, let me, Chris, I'm going to ask this one quick question I wanted to ask a minute ago. Were these dogs good tree dogs when you hunted them on coon?
Yeah, excellent. I mean, the ones that I had, my Bonaparte dog, my Spike dog, I mean, they were super good tree dogs. They were dogs that, I could name several times when, it took me all day to get to a tree. That was back, matter of fact, a lot of that was back before we had beep collars. We just had to hunt for dogs and find them, no tracking collars at all. And so the dogs, you had to have dogs that would stay there and wait for you. And both of those dogs, especially that Spike dog, had a real loud chop on him, just real loud. And I mean, you could hear him for, you get up on a high point and listen, and you could just hear him, from a couple miles away, chop, chopping away. And so, you'd have him located, and they were just excellent tree dogs, real good.
Were they
even on coon, at night?
Well, when we talk about coon versus lion, I would think the locating tree dog that we talk about out east out here for coon hounds that's able to locate that tree, and tree on scent as opposed to sight. Now, were they good, we would call locating tree dogs as well? Yeah,
they were. Yeah, that is true. You hit on something there that, I've seen in my own dogs, and, especially when you're hunting, country like I'm in right here is just all low cedar country. So when dogs come up on them, they're going to be looking at them more likely. So, they're just sight treeing,
Right.
And so you don't know if I sell somebody a puppy or I sell somebody an older dog, and I've gone through this on some of my older dogs, and I'll usually tell people the dogs are only used to really sight treeing. And if I'm selling to somebody who's hunting, Ponderosa pine, well, I don't know how good they're going to tree. And I'll tell people that. And most of them do. It takes them a few lines to start locating, because, like I say, they're used to just trailing right up to them and looking at them, and we bay a lot of lines here on the ground, so
right.
I think a lot of guys, and probably myself included, and I know coon hunters, the treeing trait or aspect is super important, and to guys that hunt in country like this, well, through the years, it gets to where it's not that important to you, because, your dogs, you just aren't locating in tall pine trees and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's something you got to think about, that, that treeing aspect. And I've had dogs, I've treed, like during the summer, I'll hunt a lot in tall timber to get, where it's a little bit cooler. And I'll tree lines, and my dogs don't tree that good. But they'll get the hang of it if you catch a couple lines, and they'll start locating and treeing better. But they're just not used to that. They're used to just basically looking right at a line. When they trail up to it, they're treeing,
Right.
So it is definitely different, a lot of difference.
Yeah, we encounter that out east, and I see this with my breed, the Plott breed of dogs not being the tree dogs that the old line Plotts that we had were. Because bear are much more plentiful now, it's very easy to strike a bear track. Many times it's a hot track. The dogs, are bred for speed and to catch, and many times they're watching that bear go up that tree. So naturally, they tree. But that locating treeing instinct is just something that I often wondered about those Western dogs. Did you have something, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Chris Powell.
Here we go.
Here we go.
It's the Chris and Chris show.
That's right. Hey, I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit there, Chris Todd, about breeding true to type, because I'm looking at your Facebook page right here, and you posted a picture of 3 generations of lion hounds. And if I couldn't pick those three hounds out of those 3 that you've got listed right there just by looking at them, I'm not much of a houndsman, because I see a lot of similarities there in their build, their head shape, things like that. But I also wondered about if you're being pretty consistent there on your type as well. So do you want to revisit that, or we shined that tree enough?
Well, now I think I know the picture you're talking about. It's of actually grandpa, son, and grandson, I believe. And actually,
Yeah.
if I could add my original scout to that photo, there'd be 4 dogs there that look an awful lot alike. And
Yeah.
I have myself personally. Those are I breed for a certain type of dog. I do personally, and so my dogs do. I could add some females to those that would look just like them too, you know. But I've made some crosses on some dogs that would look nothing like them, you know. And I think what I found myself, I started believing that I was just getting too close because the blood that I had was very limited. The amount of blood that I had of the old Goswick blood was so limited of what I had that I started crossing out to a few other things, you know. And I made a cross into one Cameron male dog that just threw me some excellent dogs. I mean, some really good hounds. And so some of them dogs, I believe the blue dog in that picture, he does have a little bit of that Cameron blood in him. That's where the blue tick came from in my dogs, is from the Cameron blood. And so some of the crosses I've made, I crossed on a Jeff Allen male. Jeff Allen's got an excellent strain of line hounds in southern Utah, northern Arizona. And I crossed on one male of his, and he has Walker dogs. So they kind of threw, you know, some dogs that look more Walker looking than my dogs do. They're completely different looking than my dogs are. Now I'm on that cross, I'm down to 3/4 my blood and 1/4 Jeff's blood now. And they're starting to look more and more like my dogs again, the old strain of my dogs. So, you know, it's just according to the cross that I make, you know, as to how they're looking. But those 3 males sitting there together are all real heavy on that Goswick breeding. All 3 of those males are. And so, yeah, they look quite a bit alike, yeah.
The follow-up to that is, I'm curious about what you're talking about as far as characteristics of dogs. I'm curious on your opinion. So is a dog's ability to track in dry ground in the condition you're at in Kingman, and I passed through that country last year, and it was extremely rocky. Not a lot of high trees anywhere that I saw. And I'm curious about, is a dog's ability to track more about his ability to discriminate track scent? And what I mean by that is, if you take a dog from back east here and he's got the desire to hunt and he's got the brains to decipher what that scent is telling him, can he tree a lion, or do you feel like that you need to have a dog that's bred specifically from your country for your conditions that you're hunting in?
Well, I'm just going to tell you my opinion, okay?
That's what I'm wanting.
I believe that, okay, if we take 2 puppies, one of them is strictly out of my blood and one of them is out of the world champion coonhound, I believe you have a better chance with mine than you will with the world champion coonhound. But at the same time, I believe, like with older dogs, they have to acclimate to how dry it is here, number one. I mean, it's just, you can't believe how dry it is here, you know, and it dries, you know, if you get a lot of rain, give it a week and it's just going to be dust. So I think I've had a lot of guys come and hunt with me from northern states, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, where they snow hunt. That's all they do. And they're catching a bunch of lines. And they'll come down here and their dogs will not trail a lick. They won't strike a line track. They won't start a line track. They won't join in. They won't nothing on a line track. They won't do it. So I think a lot of it is the dog acclimating to how dry it is here more than anything else. And, you know, those dogs know what a line is because, you know, like I say, they're on about 30 lines a year. But it's just so much different, you know, as far as trailing conditions that, you know, it'll make really good dogs look bad. And I'm not saying there's anything in the world wrong with those dogs, because there's not. You know, there's nothing wrong with them other than that they're just not used to how dry it is here. They're not used to trailing in real dry conditions. So, yeah, you know, bringing a coon dog out here, say a trained coon dog, I think he'd have a lot of problems here, you know, trailing a line. I really do.
Well, I had similar, yeah, Chris, I had similar problems back in the 69 and 70 when I was stationed in West Texas. And I brought a Plott dog, a young dog that had no trouble trailing out in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia and West Virginia. But when I brought him out to West Texas to the dry condition, we used the term he was kind of like a lost ball in high weeds when it came to trailing. But he did, as that year went on, he got better at it. So I think what you're saying is a dog basically can learn to do this, which gets into a whole different discussion and something that I wrote about recently, that I think, that most dogs have basically the same ability to smell, but they may not have trained their brains or may not be intelligent enough to trail under those kind of conditions. And I know that's a whole different subject for another day. And we've kind of gotten off my outline here, but this is great. Let's just pursue this a little bit. What would be your profile of the ideal dry ground lion hound? Describe that animal for us.
Okay. I'll go way back to when I first started. And people telling me, okay, this is what the ideal lion hound is. You set him down on a line track, and he just pounds away at that track an inch by inch if he has to. Just, basically walking on that track and raising his head and booing at the sky, and that's the way a lion dog is. Well, I found out after I got some of that Goswick blood. I think I put somewhere on Facebook how owning those dogs changed the way that I looked at everything, because I could, I'd take originally my Bonaparte dog was my older dog that I had a lot of that blood, and you put him on a line track, and I mean, he just would literally, compared to other dogs, he would just fly down a track. And the thing about the dog was, when it came to, say, you make a lose on a track, lose a track, he was usually the dog that would find it again because he was an active hunter. And he, at the same time, he had a super good nose on him. He could out cold trail most dogs too. Even the dogs that are, the ones that are, you watch them walking up a track and think, boy, that dog's got a super cold nose and this and that. That dog would just run off and leave them. And so talking to a few people that knew the Goswicks, and Bobby Reeves being one of them, it changed everything that I thought. In Arizona, a lot of the year, by the time noon rolls around, 12 o'clock in the morning, by the time that rolls around, it's too hot to trail anymore. And their thought always was that the best thing you could do is have a dog with a lot of speed and try to get that line caught before it got so hot they couldn't go anymore. So in other words, you want to breed for a dog that has, as much distance on that line track as possible before he can't go anymore, before it just gets so hot. Once it gets so hot, there ain't a dog alive that just can't, they can't continue to trail. So that speed is just really important to me. A dog that can really get up and move a track and is real active on a track. I mean, just, can really fly on a line track, basically, And I found out, I've got some videos that I guess, I should have probably left on Facebook to show people my dog's trailing a little bit more. But had one video. I hunted a desert mountain range over here by Kingman, Arizona. I worked over there for Game and Fish for 3 years. And I had a female line that we were after. And I had nine female dogs. And they trailed out on like an open hillside where you could see them. And I mentioned in the video, that's the way I like to see the dogs, just like a swarm of bees looking for a line track. They lost the track and they're just going everywhere trying to find that track, to keep it moving. And to me, that's just real important when you're hunting on dry ground. You got to have dogs that can move a track. And so that's one thing. And of course, they need to be super tough, good tough-footed dog, and the way I hunt, I've got 2 packs of dogs, so I hunt them every other day. And normally I don't have too many problems with sore-footed dogs because I do hunt them every other day. Now, not this past spring, but the spring before, I hunted 90 out of 92 days. I hunted. And so I had
that's pretty dedicated there, Chris Todd.
I had to divide my dogs into 3 packs because they started getting wore down and get sore-footed, from hunting that much. But and I don't worry too much about the voice on a dog. A lot of my dogs are chop mouth dogs, and I really don't care. That doesn't matter. I know a lot of guys like ball mouth dogs, and that just doesn't matter to me. I like good cold trailing dogs. The thing about hunting, especially where I'm at right now, is that there's not that many lines here. I mean, there's just not. I mean, you can't say you cut a track today hunting. You can't just, if your dogs can work it at all, you got to try to catch that line, because you can't count on going down the road a little ways and finding a fresher track. You just can't, Mm-hmm. So you got to have dogs that got a nose on them. And a lot of what that does for me is if I can strike a line track and dogs can put, let's say, 5 miles on this trail today, it tells me where that line's going, or it gives me a good chance to know where I should go tomorrow to have a chance to catch that line. And so I go the next day and hopefully pick him up and catch him the next day, or
there you go,
pick him up and put another 5 miles on him and keep trying to go until I can catch up to him. And that's where the really good nosed dogs come in right there. So
I've got a follow up, and I kind of want to take us back to this nose question, because it really is one of the most common things that I see from these hound hunting groups on social media, or the old days of chat groups about gauging the nose in a hound. And I was a canine handler for 7 years for the state of Indiana. And so we actually tested these dogs under different conditions. We would see. I had a dog that I had a dog that would trail after 12 or 13 hours on some occasions. If I laid that track in the evening, had a person go out and lay a track in the evening, I would let that thing rest overnight, and I'd come back the next morning and run it like it was red hot. But if I ran that on short grass or dry conditions, in the conditions we've got here now, 30 minutes later or 45 minutes later, I could not run that track. And so I think there's a lot of times when houndsmen don't know what the definition of cold-nosed is, or, how a nose actually works. And I was just really excited to hear your opinion on the different conditions, the different scenting conditions, because you are hunting in extreme conditions down there. So that was the reason why I brought you to that.
Yeah, and you're right there, because I don't believe, like me, I mean, I can tell you, I strike a line track and I say it's a 2-day-old line track. Heck, I don't know, I'm just guessing. Because I don't know for sure when that line walked through, but I'm just looking at how my dogs are trailing and working, And now I've had tracks where I'll leave off at dark, and the dogs won't be moving very good, and I'll leave off at dark, come back the next day with another pack of dogs and pick it up and just keep going like I was the day before, just keep right on going. So, so I know that track is another at least 12 hours older, or actually 24 hours older than when I originally struck it, But yeah, it's hard to judge. Like when you're in dry country like this, you can look at a line track in the sand, and you can say, it's just hard to judge looking at that.
I can't even imagine.
It really is,
I can't even imagine trying to decipher that track. That's crazy.
Yeah,
seeing that
it's a guess.
Around here, I mean, you look at the amount of moisture that comes out of the ground and the cracks that are around it, and I'm talking about law enforcement canine tracking. You got to have a few tracking skills to do that before you put your dog in there. But out there in that sand, where you can preserve that track until it rains again, and you'll never know how old it is.
Well,
yeah,
the only gauge you have is your dog's reaction to it.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're right. That's all you can go by, is how your dogs react to it, how they trail it. That's all you can go by. That's it.
Well, what about we've talked about the hound that you like. What are some of the things that you can't tolerate in a dog? You start a puppy out. I guess we should start there. At what age do you start your pups, Chris?
Well, normally, because of, we're riding, I probably average 20, 22 miles a day on a horse. And so, this country is pretty rough. It's hard on a dog. And I believe, and I've told people this before, and I really believe this, that you can ruin a dog by starting them too early. Because what happens, I think, you get on them real long, hard rides and you wear a puppy out. And he just doesn't, he's going to end up not wanting to go. You're just going to ruin him. So I like to wait as close to a year as I possibly can. But, and it seems to me like with the dogs I have now, my female dogs seem to be faster starting dogs. And they seem to be able to take the hunting earlier than the male dogs can. And one good example of that I've got is a little female I have now I call Freckles. And Freckles, when she was 5 months old, she was driving me crazy because I was loading up and going hunting every day, and I'd let her run around. I'd let her hop in the box, hop in the back of the truck, and just kind of getting her ready to start hunting. Well, then I would throw her back in her pen, and she was howling and screaming and just having a fit. And I've got problems with neighbors as it is right now, and already, so I didn't need that every morning, So I thought, well, you little son of a gun, she was about 5 months old. I said, well, let's just go then. I'm going to take you, and I really, I hate taking them that little, but she's real athletic, and I thought she can take it, Well, naturally what happens is you take a puppy like that and you get on probably the toughest hunt you've been on your whole life, And we went south of where I'm at here there's a peak down here called Austin Peak, and you can see Austin Peak off of I-40, and it is one bad son of a gun. I mean, it's ringed by about, the bluffs are 200-300 feet high all the way around it, and we run that line, started the line, the track was real tough, and I'm not going to say she was helping a whole lot when it was tough, but she went with the dogs the whole way, and they went out and topped out on that Austin Peak and had the line bait on top of that mountain. And so I ended up having to hike up there. You can't ride a horse up there. I had to hike up to her, and there she was just baying away on this line, So I thought, well, great, 5 months old, maybe we got the tough one out of the way. Well, her day came to hunt again in 2 days, and I go down to Wickiup, which is out in the desert south of me, and we get after another tom. And this tom won't stop. I mean, he just will not. He would let me get within 50, 60 yards, and he'd take off running again. And even my old dogs were about ready to faint. So I was yelling and screaming at them, trying to just stop them because, days I hunt by myself, I'm not going to kill a lion anyway, unless I'm getting paid to do it by, doing depredation work or whatever. But I wasn't getting paid, so I was just trying to stop them. And I got them stopped, and they're all laying on the ground, just, about ready to faint. And there's that puppy right in the middle of them. You little son of a gun. So she's gone ever since, starting at 5 months. And that's definitely younger than I care to start a dog, And, and the opposite of that is I've got 2 males here that are just bred as good as a dog can get bred as far as I'm concerned. And I started them when they were about 10 months. I started taking them hunting, 2 littermate brothers. And they started out like a house of fire, like, man, these are going to be, a couple real good ones, And then they just tailed off to where they didn't want to hardly do anything anymore. And I started thinking, well, I started them too young, obviously, they're already tired of this stuff, And so ended up anyway this spring, before I stopped hunting real hard, they started coming back and going the other way and started doing good again. But it just kind of shows the difference, in puppies, just what they'll do. And those females that I've found, at least in the dogs I have, seem to be able to take the hunting earlier than those males can. And I don't ask me why, but that just seems to be the way it is. But I try to let them mature enough to where I think they can take a real hard day of riding, without it affecting them. So,
one of the things
that how I decide when to start them.
one of the things that I think houndsmen by rule, they think if they don't have something 5 to 6 months old that's getting it done, they're wasting their time. But most police dogs, I mean, even if you look at the canines that come over from Germany, a lot of times they're 2 years old before they start any kind of formal training. And I know that we did the same thing with our dogs. 18 months was plenty young to put them through the rigors of training. And that's just an interesting concept that you have there, and it kind of validates what a lot of accomplished law enforcement, police training, even military dog trainers have already learned in this whole thing, Chris.
Yeah, well, my main concept, or the main thing in my head, is that don't expect these young dogs and these puppies to be my best dog when they're a year old, because they're not going to be. I give them time. And I like to see it in phases or stages. When they're a year old, I like to see them here. When they're 2 years old, I like to see them here. And then when they're 3 years old, they ought to be a pretty darn good line dog, you know. And I just give them time to get age on them and develop and make a dog, you know. And I think a lot of guys expect too much of dogs when they're too young. But, you know, once again, that's just my opinion. So, you know.
Well, let's
Steve,
talk.
I'm handing off to you.
Okay. Well, man, this is good stuff. Really brings up a lot of questions. I'm kind of like sitting at the feet of a master. That's what I feel like, Chris, because you obviously know this game inside and out, and been a houndsman all my life. And there are aspects of coon and bear hunting that I feel fairly comfortable to discuss, but I'm really enjoying our conversation. Let's talk about, I want to rewind just a little bit. How old were you when you went on your first lion hunt?
I was 18 years old, 42 years ago.
I see. What was that like? Can you share that experience?
Well, you know, actually, I went on, I'm going to try. Actually, my earlier hunts weren't that good. You know, we chased a lot of deer. You know.
Yeah.
I had some friends that had some good deer chasing dogs, and you know, it took a while to catch my first line. It did, and but I never got frustrated with it, because I think I always just loved it out in the mountains, and I always loved the dogs. So, but yeah.
Well, let me jump in here. Okay. Typically out east out here, a young guy wants to get into coon hunting. First thing he does is go buy a 4-wheel drive pickup truck. Then he buys an expensive dog box. Then he buys a tracking system. And then he buys boots and waders and coon squallers and lights that look like the landing lights on a Boeing 727 to put on his head. And then about the last thing he thinks about is he better get a dog to go with.
And he bargain shops. And he bargain shops for the dog.
Right. He goes to one of our big events like the Grand American over in Orangeburg, South Carolina, where there's still the old dog trader rows, unfortunately, and he's looking for a bargain. What was, going lion hunting? How was all that process with you? Did you get a dog first, a horse first? What did you do?
Well, you know, I think I got the dogs first, but I did bargain shop though. But I had a couple of friends there in high school that, well, they had dogs that could catch lions in the snow, you know. So if we got out in the snow, we were okay. But if we went on dirt, we were chasing deer, you know. So yeah, I did a lot of bargain shopping, and I actually I bought a couple puppies from one guy that were nice pups, and then the same guy, Bobby Reeves was his name, and I have to thank Bobby for really getting me started, because he sold me a really good dog pretty cheap. The dog was a bad deer chaser, but if you got him on a line, he could catch a line, you know. And so he got my other dog started, you know, and then I went on from there and got better and better dogs, you know, better broke dogs. And so actually that really got me started right there, you know, was getting that dog from him. that although he ran the deer, he could definitely catch a line too. So that really got me going.
Okay, from that point, then you decided at some juncture along the way that you wanted to do this professionally. How'd that come about?
Well, shoot, I'll tell you what, before I even graduated from high school, I begged my dad. My dad probably thought he'd raised a crazy kid. I begged my dad to buy a place where I could go and just guide hunters. And my dad started looking at me like, "You're a nut, kid. It ain't going to happen," But I wanted to guide from the time I was a senior in high school. That's what I wanted to do, was guide. And once I got into the hounds, then I just wanted to guide for mountain lion. That's what I wanted to do, and I've always wanted to guide, and I got a good job with AT&T, and so I stayed there, and I rode that job out for 27 years, just hating it most days because I wanted to be out line hunting, and and now I look back on it, it was probably the thing, it was probably meant to be that I just stay there and, do my time there. And so I just always wanted to guide hunts, and then of course I read about Dale Lee and, the stuff he did in his book and never be done by anybody again, but still, that made me even more want to just guide hunters, guide and hunt lines. That's all I wanted to do. It was from an early age.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of years ago, I had the privilege to go out to the PKC organization's youth hunt in Salem, Illinois, and speak to these hunters. These kids qualify throughout the year. It's coon hunting, competition hunting. But, I see so many young people, they say right away, I want to be a coon hunter. That's what I want to do in life. I want to be a professional handler. I want to, go to a coon hunt every night. And I try to tell these kids that get your education, learn a trade, or go to college, whichever you choose, and get a good job, and then you'll make money to finance that coon hunting habit.
Yeah.
But if you, it's kind of like a kid growing up in the inner city. Everyone thinks he's going to play in the NBA, when he gets big enough. But so I think we need these day jobs to finance our habit, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. That's the thing, you got to figure out a way to make money and pay your bills, and so a lot of times the hounds don't do that. So it's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Todd's guide service. I see you on the internet, and I had the address here. Give me that web address for your website, Todd.
It is AZ in Arizona, linehunts.com.
Okay. And you typically have a 7-day hunt, is that right? Or how does that work?
My normal hunt is a 7-day hunt for any legal line. And I know I get a lot of guys that say they just want to hunt for a trophy tom line. And so that's good for me. The way I set things up, that's what I'm hunting for all the time anyways, adult tom lines. That's, I scout different areas and find sign of adult tom lines, and that's where I guide hunters. I try to catch those adult tom lines. But most of the time there's more female lines in an area than there is tom. So you tree a line, and, I've had several hunters, tell them, well, that's a female line. I mean, she's legal because in Arizona, she can't be nursing, can't have spotted kittens, with her, accompanying her, or she's not legal. So, I'll tell a hunter, yeah, she's legal. If you want to take her, it's not a tom line. So, so that's basically it. Just any legal line. But then I started the trophy hunt deal. And, the ideal behind that is that, if a guy wants to keep coming back and just trying for a trophy tom, I'll keep taking him until we get him a good trophy tom in a tree for him to take, and, so that's the only difference in those hunts. But, initially they are 7-day hunts, and, hopefully I can get a guy a good line in 7 days. And some guys I get a line for, I've caught guys lines first hour of the hunt, extremely lucky. And some guys I don't catch a line for in 7 days. So,
right.
If I do get a guy that just, I get some guys that hard hunting people. I mean, I do. I get some really hard hunting guys that, They just want to kill a big trophy tom. So that's fine with me because I love to hunt too, so we'll just keep hunting, that's fine with me. So
okay.
That is the difference between the two.
Yeah. Well, I'm a guy out here in Florida, and I call you up and I say, I want to come out and try one of these 7-day hunts. What are you going to tell me about gear, conditioning, those types of things?
Well, most guys, I'll tell them, any experience you can get riding a horse, get it before you come here. I've got really good horses. They can handle this country, but it's rough country. And the lines, most of the lines that you ever trail, it always seems like, you can start a line on a flat mesa somewhere and you're like, oh, this is a piece of cake. Well, that line's going to end up, he's going to find some rough country to go to, and it just always happens. So the more a guy can ride before he gets here, the better. The more you're used to horses. I've had people that are scared half to death of horses come here and hunt. And I've tried to warn them beforehand, to be as horse friendly, basically, well, I guess the way I would put it, be as horse friendly as possible, no horses before you come here, if you can. And
not to mention, you got horses that can handle that country, but if you got hunters that's their butts can handle the horses, that's what I've noticed about, a lot of riding. It takes some time to get in riding shape where you're not so stoved up that you can't walk a few miles or 100 yards. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. See, that's something I tell hunters is you're going to get sore. Unless for some reason we get extremely lucky and catch a line real quick, you're going to get sore. So just have that in your mind to begin with. And I'll tell people, I ride probably a couple 100 days a year. And if I'm off the horse for 30 days, let's say, and I ride, first couple of days I ride, I'm going to get sore. So, that's what I tell them. Just, have that in your mind that you come here riding, you're going to get sore. And that's another reason to ride as much as you can before you come here.
Okay.
So you're a little bit more prepared for it.
Right. I notoriously have weak knees, bad knees. What can you tell me to do to get ready for a hunt out there?
Ride a mule.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That is tough.
Yeah.
Because your knees are in a bad position sitting in the saddle. I mean, that's just all there is to it, and what I do is, I'll tell a guy before we take off in the morning, if you get sore, you tell me, because I'm not afraid to walk. I can walk and we can stretch out, and then I'll tell them we can do that every couple miles if you want, that's fine. And also I'll tell somebody if the hunt goes on, if you would rather hunt out of the truck a day or two, which I do sometimes, we'll hunt out of the truck and look for tracks out of the truck, then we can do that a day or two. And
I think that's almost worse, though. You know what I mean? It's like starting a workout program, and then you get sore the first time you do it, and then you take a couple of days off. You don't want to go back to that workout. And same way with being in the saddle. Sometimes it's even worse to do that. Sometimes it's better just to knuckle under and get back in the saddle the next day and ride it out.
Work through it. Yeah. And, I get a lot of guys that do that. I get guys that after the first day they can hardly walk, and I'm feeling sorry for them, and, but they keep getting in the saddle and hunting, and like, okay, great. That's probably the best thing you can possibly do,
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that territory out there. Now, I think all of us have been really entertained and amazed really at these photos of these lion up on a rim rock and a pack of hounds baying it, and the lion is swatting at the hounds and snarling and all that kind of stuff. How often do you encounter that kind of situation? Where do you stop most of the lions that you get after, or is there any common?
Well, the country that I'm in here, I bay have bay ups, either on a rock or a ledge or in a cave, probably 50% of the time. They don't tree, they're bayed up on a rock or whatever. And I've caught some right out in the wide open, dogs will overtake them, and, the fight or whatever you want to call it's on, they're right out in the open. And so that happens a lot here. I find that as you get up in altitude, you get into tall trees and stuff. I think a lion prefers to climb a tree. But, you know, when you're in country like this with very few trees, or they're just short trees and they got a lot of rocks they can hide in or bay up on, then you get a lot of lions that, you know, that's where you end up, you know, dogs looking right at them, you know. And
how about injuries? How about injuries to your dogs from the lion? How often does that happen?
You know, it's pretty rare. As a houndsman, you got, I've had a couple bad days, you know, where I've lost hounds, but in 40 something years. And, the guys that I've talked to and that I hunt with and stuff, they lose more dogs to bluffs and stuff than the actual line themselves, because they'll get to chasing the line. They'll just try to go where a line goes, and they can't do it. You know, lions can get around real good. You know, they can leap 20, 30 feet, you know, off of rocks, and dogs try to stay up with them, and they end up falling off, breaking a leg or whatever, you know, getting hurt bad doing stuff like that. And I've had dogs get hurt with lines falling out of the tree, and after they were shot. And I've had a couple dogs. I had one dog that he got bit pretty bad. The line fell right on top of him and bit him, and that took us a while to get that healed up. And I've had dogs that are real bad to fight, and if the dogs are left loose and that line comes down, they're going to jump on them, and you know the fight's going to start. And I've had dogs get hurt like that. So probably the safest thing you can do is try to tie all your dogs up. But then when you're hunting country like this where there's nowhere to tie them, well, then, you know, you take your chances, you know, hopefully nothing will happen. But in 42 years of hunting, I've had very few, you know, really bad accidents between lions and dogs. And you look at a lion, and I mean, if he wanted to, a lion could kill a dog pretty easily if he wanted to, but for some reason they don't seem to have that temperament, you know, to really attack one particular dog and try to kill it. You know, they just don't.
Right.
Luckily, they just don't do that. Luckily, you know.
Yeah. Is a lion's claws or teeth toxic to a dog the way a bear can be? I know we were always concerned when we got the dogs in a wreck on a bear. It seemed like their teeth, especially a bite, there was a danger of infection. Is that a problem with lions?
Yeah, it is. Pretty bad. I had a dog, I believe 2 years ago. He got bit, and I thought he was paralyzed. The lion bit him right where his fangs went right in underneath his spine, and I thought he paralyzed the dog, but he didn't. He just, the vet showed me the X-rays, and it looked like somebody shot him with a 38 twice in his back. I mean, he just had two holes down underneath his spine, you know. But that infection took 3 operations to finally get all of the infection out of him. It was bad. Yeah, it just kept getting infected. And I think with lions, maybe it's bears too, but with lions, it's a lot of the meat that they eat or whatever,
right.
You know, whatever is on the meat that they, and the claws are the same way. I've caught lions that were on a kill, and you pop them claws out and they're full of hair and meat and stuff underneath those claws, you know. And I'm sure if that gets down inside a dog, you know, you're going to have a real bad infection problem, you know.
Well, how hard are the lions on the deer herd there where you live?
Well, they're pretty hard on them. We don't have much of a deer herd here at all, but you know, and I think our problem here is that our deer herd is so depressed already, so bad that, you know, I hate to say it, but probably pretty much anywhere you got a good lion population, they need to be thinned out. And I've heard that from a few biologists, game and fish biologists, the same feeling. If you've got a good deer population, you can have a good lion population. But if you've got a low population of deer and a good population of lion, well, those deer are never going to come back. You know, they can't, you know, because lions just keep killing them. You know, so here in western Arizona, we really don't have a real good deer population. We've got one mountain range over here south of Kingman that there's a park on top of it and all that, and there's a pretty good deer population there, and you can always find lions there because the lions, I don't think you could kill them off that mountain because lines from just all around surrounding areas just keep repopulating it, because that's where all the deer are at. They just keep going in there, So I think that, I really don't think, I believe, just like I said, if you've got a good, healthy deer population, you can have a good, healthy lion population at the same time.
Chris, I have kind of a follow-up on that. So when they're not depredating on the deer herd, and I say depredating, should actually be preying on the deer herd.
Yep.
Yeah. Then where do they turn to if they don't have deer to feed on?
Well, here we have javelina. The little, people call them pigs, but I guess it's separate from. They're not really a pig. They're a separate little species of javelina. They're I don't know if you know what a javelina is or not, but
sure,
they're like a little pig.
Sure.
About a 40-pound pig. But we have those. I've caught lines that were eating foxes. That's what they were living on, was fox. They got a lot of jackrabbits, and then a lot of them turned to cattle. Eat rancher cattle, calves. And,
that's what I was wondering about, the predation on livestock. And you mentioned about working with Fish and Game, so I'm just curious how much of your work is actually working with them and doing line studies and not only that, but doing some of that depredation work on livestock.
Well, the job I had with them was specific to one mountain range, that they were trying to increase the mule deer herd on this one mountain range. And they went in and they replaced all the waters, cattle waters, everything, new waters for so the deer could could get better water. And part of that, they did aerial shoots on coyotes, and they had me hunting mountain lions. And that was the work I did with them, was just killing everything I could kill as far as mountain lions was concerned. And that was off of one mountain range. And now, whether it had an effect or not, probably the building of the waters probably helped more than anything else. But the thing that really got me, I talked to the ranchers in the country, naturally looking for line sign and stuff. And I found line kills of several really nice buck mule deer. And I showed these ranchers some of the heads I was finding, and every one of them to a rancher told me they've never seen hunters, deer hunters in that area kill bucks that nice. And so that kind of tells you, them lines are right in there. I mean, shoot, they're finding really good muley bucks to kill. The lines are. But
the reason I asked that question, Chris, is because we've got to. It goes back to this old adage of stop killing our own. The work you're doing there, and I'm talking about among sportsmen here. People need to support Chris Todd in northwestern Arizona, that's out there working for Fish and Game to try to bring these deer herds back. Deer hunting, no doubt, is the largest economical impact on our hunting sports right now, and we need to respect the work that the houndsmen are doing across the country for an actual government agency like Arizona Fish and Game to help restore the habitat and the predator-prey ratios there. And I think it's an important point to bring up.
Yeah, in that area there, our hunt here in Arizona is on the draw, where you have to put in for hunts, to get drawn even for deer. And that area there went from like 750 tags down to 250 or something like that. That's how bad the deer herd just crashed. And so they were, really, to their credit, we're trying to figure out, different ways to bring that deer herd back. And that's actually, I worked for them until this past, about a year ago, that contract I had with them expired. And so I'm sure to take a while to see if we had any effect at all on the lion population or on the deer herd there. But like I said, I believe the actually rebuilding all the waters probably helped more than anything else, because as deer we're in desert country, then deer need water, and it's been so dry in Arizona. We've been in a drought now for I don't know, I say about 15 years or whatever. So there's not a lot of water anywhere for them. So hopefully we did some good. It's something that'll probably take a few years for them to figure out.
The rebuilding of the water source plus, putting that predator-prey ratio in check is certainly going to help the deer herds there. So it's all part of a big orchestrated dance to for the benefit of all wildlife. And even though water is premium, predators need water too. So I'm sure they are thriving on that water source. And I just thought it was important to showcase that work you're doing out there to reduce some of the predator numbers on the prey.
Well, along that line, Chris Todd, how many deer would a mountain lion kill in a year or a month or whatever, would you say?
Well, see, every study the Game and Fish has done has said approximately 1 week. Now, and that, I would believe that if you're talking a single line
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Say that again, because I got a digital blip on my end. Say that number again of your opinion.
About one a week, for a single line. Now, when you start talking, you got a female lion, let's say, that has 2 adult kittens with her. Well, they're going to have to kill almost 3 times that much. And I think a lot of times in studies that I've seen too is a lot of times those female lions that have kittens will make multiple kills at one time, and there's no way they can eat it all, so they're killing more than one a week. They're going to average more than one a week. So, that's the whole thing. Like in an area where I was at, let's say, we started out with 10 lions on that mountain. Well, if one a week, they'd be killing 520 deer in a year, and there probably weren't 520 deer in the whole mountain. So that could kind of tell you the impact that, that many lions could have on a deer population right there. It could be pretty major, so.
Would they feed on one deer all week, or how long will they typically feed on a kill?
It usually lasts them 3 or 4 days, and once again, it's according to the time of the year. Like right now, we're, 105 degrees, and that meat's not going to last that long, and they won't eat. The lions I've seen, they'll leave anything that starts to spoil and stink. You won't see a lion. The lion's not going to come to it. They won't eat it. So in real warm weather like this, it's going to be spoiling a lot quicker. So
what cleans it up then? Coyotes mainly, and
coyotes are real good at finding coyotes. And in this country, I was going to say bear, but there's just not that many bear in this country.
Right.
So that's not something here, but there's tons of coyotes. So they'll clean lion kills up.
Right. Well, how far will a lion travel typically? Let's say you're cold trailing this lion, and he's gone through the country. How far would he typically travel in a day, do you think?
Well, once again, it's just according to the individual line. Now, I had one line, real quick little story north of me here that I trailed 3 days straight before I caught up to him. And each day he was doing 7-8 miles a day. And, and he just made a huge, big loop through all the country north of me. And finally we caught up to him on the 3rd day. And I mean, we covered well over 20 miles, in 3 days. And so the tom lines, usually you get on a female. I always look at it like you get on a female line, and chances are you'll catch her faster, but, because they don't travel as far, but at the same time, they don't leave as much scent either. And you get on a tom line and it's scratching and marking his territory. And, the track could just go on and on forever. And, a lot of them will they'll just out travel you, you'll trail them so far and it'll be getting dark, and you think, well, if I'm going to make it back to my truck before dark, I kind of turn around and go back, So it's just, I'd say, if a line that's not on a kill, a tom line doesn't have a kill, and he's out scratching, marking his country, you're looking probably 7-8 miles a night, something like that.
Wow.
Normally,
Well, what's the breeding season for lions?
Most of them are after the first of the year, so that their kittens are born in the springtime.
What's the gestation period? Typical.
They're 90 days.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And the thing is, that's been a big argument here in Arizona when all the kittens are born or stuff like that. But I've caught little dinky kittens at every month of the year. So it's not a set it's not a set month. They can have kittens anytime, but the majority of them are born, and I'm sure it's a natural thing to coincide with, when deer fawns are born and stuff like that. When there's more game, there's more deer for the females to kill and to feed their kittens, in the early spring, So that's when most of them are born.
I see.
But they can be born any time of the year,
Right. Well, what do you think the ratio runs generally, toms to females, or does that vary?
Yeah, it varies. I think in an area that's not hunted, you're looking at 3 to 4 females to every tom. But you got, where they're, pretty much everywhere in Arizona gets hunted. So, the females are being taken or whatever. And so that ratio just, you can't really say for sure what it would normally be. But in some studies they've done where they've closed areas down, it seems to be about 3 to 4 females to each tom.
Well, let's talk about the dogs a little bit more. What's your all-time favorite lion hound, Chris?
That I've owned personally?
That you've owned personally.
Well, I've got probably 3 of them, but my spike dog that I've mentioned on Facebook is one of them, my little blue tick dog, and then my Bonaparte dog was a red tick hound, and my original scout dog was a red and white hound that looks like he looked like my current scout dog that is his son, and probably those 3.
And what separated them? Now you talked about Beauregard, I think, as being that real fast trailer,
Bonaparte.
right? Bonaparte.
Yeah, all 3 of those were really super fast trailing dogs. All 3 of them were, and they would all 3 leave other dogs behind, on a track, and they were all 3 the kind of dogs that. You mentioned earlier, and I forgot to say this, that about traits that I don't like to see in dogs. And one of those traits is a dog that doesn't bark when it strikes a track, or doesn't bark much on track. And the one reason is that if you get a dog that's really quick and fast on a track, they'll leave your other dogs. They'll just leave. If they say you've made a big lose here and you're sitting on your horse and, everybody's looping around you and looking. Well, all of a sudden you see, Bonaparte or whoever. In this case, it's Brownie's a dog that I have that's pretty silent on track. And you'll see her going over a ridge a half a mile away. She hasn't barked, so nobody knows she has the track, and she's gone. So then you got to go try to catch up to her. So that's another trait that I don't like in dogs is a dog that's pretty silent. So, but all 3 of
go ahead.
I was just going to say all 3.
But it'll wait.
I was just going to say all 3 of those dogs were super fast on track. I mean, really, really fast. They caught a lot of lines because they could just work a lose real quick. They were real good on a backtracking line. They could figure a line that was pulling tricks on them and stuff and straighten it out and go and catch it. So that's the reason all 3 of those really stand out in my mind.
I got you. Well, my experience with bear dogs has been similar to that. And, back east, dogs that could cold trail a track that was made the day before or the night before. And we maybe struck this track at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And those dogs would take the scent off the brush and so forth and cold trail with their head up, always reaching out there on that track, with the ones that you could get that bear jumped and treed before it got too dark to hunt, So it's interesting to hear you say, that you like that kind of trailing dog, because that's what my father bred for in his bear dogs that he bred for over 50 years, were those dogs that really punched the track, hot or cold, really, reaching for it, may run into catch, whether it was cold or hot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. You got to have a dog that'll push. You got to push a track or you just ain't, especially in this desert country. I believe, and I made this statement before, that in desert country especially, if you get a line that gets out in front of the dogs and say gets at a good trot in front of dogs, and you don't have dogs that'll really push to catch up to that line, you'll never catch it. That line won't stop, so you've got to have dogs that'll push that line.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
Well, there's a couple other areas that I want to approach unless Chris has got something right here.
No, I'm listening and learning.
Well, the one thing I wanted to ask you about your horses, do you breed these horses yourself? What do you look for in a good lion horse?
No, actually, all three of these horses are Mustang horses that came off the range. All three of them were captured and brought in and broke. And that's the three I have. And I like horses with, real heavy boned horses with big feet on them. And, a lot of horses that are bred today are, fine boned horses or whatever, I don't think can take the everyday pounding in these rocks and stuff. It's too hard on their tendons and stuff. I like the ones that are real heavy boned and got real big feet on them. And these Mustangs just seem to be naturally really tough horses. People tell me I'm riding a bunch of mutts, and that is what I'm riding, a bunch of mutts, It is exactly what I got. But
are they a little smaller horse, Chris?
No, actually, the three I have are all. I have one that's, I know people look at the Mustang horses. Most of them are smaller horses. Let's say 14-hand horses. And right. I've got one that's like that, but he's real wide and real. Muscular. Yep. And he can really travel. And then the other two I have are over 15 hands. They're bigger horses.
Wow. And, we had a Mustang. We had a Mustang growing up. As a kid, we had a Mustang we bought, and that was the toughest little horse I've ever ridden in my life.
Yeah, they're just tough. They're just naturally tough son of a guns, And I think for the hunting I do, a lot of people like mules, but I'm not a mule person. I don't get along with them for some reason or another. But these horses are probably as close as you can get to that. Them Mustang horses as close as you can get to mule as far as the toughness, and they're just naturally good in the rocks. They, the three I have, the first line I went to put on them, they didn't even flinch. They don't care. They pack real good, and so
right.
They're just good for this. Good for this line hunting business.
Well, when you take go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that it takes them a while. Everyone that I've gotten has hated dogs. So that's from and I guess it's a natural thing, you're out on the range, they look at them as coyotes, I guess, but once they get used to the dogs, they don't pay any attention to them. But everyone I've gotten has hated dogs to begin with. So
do you have any
the only problem I've had with them?
Reversely there, or conversely, I guess, do you have any problem with dogs not getting along with the horses?
No, and part of that is I won't tolerate it. I won't allow I tell them the horses are not their business. And They learn that real quick. You leave the horses alone. And so, yeah, they get along fine. They hunt real good with horses. And now I had a dog, a little blue tick female that I was hunting with a friend, and she had some horses she was breaking. And this daggum horse stomped this blue tick female of mine and kicked her. And that dog was a little horse shy after that. She would go way around horses and stay away from them, but she had good reason after getting stopped, Exactly. But they do good around the horses, and like I say, they learn from an early age. They don't mess with my horses at all. So,
well, I hunted bear over in the Capitan Mountain area there, Lincoln National Forest in New Mexico one time, with Gary Washburn and George Hobbs. And they put me on a horse they called Scout, and he had some Welsh pony in him. Had the big, thick neck and all. Do you ever have any experience with he was a real sure-footed horse in the mountains. And he looked a little strange compared to the other horses. He was a paint color horse, had that gigantic neck. But he was a good one. I guess knew he had a rookie, and he was real good to me. So I enjoyed riding Scout for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to offend anybody as far as horses are concerned, but I think those crossed up horses like that with the Welsh pony or the Mustang or whatever, they're a lot better horses for this type of stuff. They're not the horses you're going to be going to a roping on or whatever, roping off of, but for this type of stuff, riding real rough country and stuff, they're just a lot better horses than the majority of the quarter horses and stuff people are breeding today. Like I say, I don't want to offend anybody, but I just think they're better, for that type of work. Yeah, specialist. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I want to ask you a question about lion meat, about eating lion. Do you eat it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is.
Yeah.
It's very good. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, everyone tells me that, and I haven't tried it, and I want to. How do you prepare it?
Well, I've done it different ways. Actually, the last line that I ate some of. I had some fellows, some guys with me that came to hunt, and they wanted to do their own cooking. So we caught a line, and they took the back straps off of it, and they saturated it in milk for 24 hours, and then we ate it, and it was darn good. It was real good, And so there's different ways to do it. It's like any other meat, and it's really, I know people eating a cat kind of bothers some people, but it's really good meat. I think it's better than deer meat, definitely. But
we've been doing it in Chinese restaurants back here for years.
Oh, you're really gonna get it. You're gonna get it, pal. Well, one of our listeners, Jonathan Lesperance, Chris, where is he, in Arizona or Nevada?
Nevada.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He mentioned on social media I had posted something about eating lion, and he said it was very good and reminded him of pork. Yeah,
that's probably about the closest thing you could relate it to would be pork. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
At least you didn't say it tastes like chicken.
Tastes like chicken. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what about? I wanted to ask you about the weight on the lions in your area. Do you catch any what would be considered trophy lions, or is it kind of? I know when we had Calvin Redhouse on, he talked about the lions in his area probably not being as large as those that are typically caught, up north, say way up in British Columbia or something like that. Size-wise or trophy-wise, through Boone and Crockett or whatever, how do they rate there in your area?
Well, we're not real big here. No, when I worked, did the work for the Game and Fish, I got a chance to actually do live weights on some lines. And the biggest Tom line, they wanted me to bring the body in whole, so they could weigh them. And the biggest line they weighed was 148, which is a really big. That's a big Tom for us, And once again, to Calvin's point, the further north you go, the heavier they're going to be. And I think you'd probably see that in mule deer also. And I think a lot of it has to do with most of the lines are caught during the winter up there, when lions have their heaviest coat and they have the most fat built up on them to make it through the winter because there's a lot colder winters up there. So I think those lines are going to be, 10% heavier or so, And so as far as skull size, head size, now, a really good Tom here will score 14, and Boone and Crockett's 15. So, as head size, I think they're a little smaller, Mm-hmm. But and the minimum to make Arizona record book is 14. So, we a good mature Tom here will make the Arizona record book, the 14.
Good.
But,
is there any special commendation or contests or whatever they have annually for the biggest lion out there?
No, not that I know of, no.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, another quick question, and then I want to ask you a little bit about any kind of organized effort out there to preserve lion hunting for the future, and I'm sure Chris could address maybe that better than I, but I wanted to ask you, if you're out there looking for lion sign, what are the telltale signs besides just the size of the track that you're seeing a male versus a Tom versus a female? What do you look for when you're reading sign?
Well, the main thing I look for, not necessarily you look for tracks, but you look along the rims, canyon bottoms, whatever, looking for scratches, where Toms will mark their territory. And they'll, I don't know if you know what a scratch looks like or not, but they use their back feet and they'll kick back and make a little mound,
right,
like under trees and stuff. And when you're looking for Toms, that's probably the fastest way to find if there's a Tom in an area or not, is to look for those scratches, and because they'll stay for months, and you'll know, whereas if you just got a rain, the rain could have washed out any line tracks you might see, scratches will be there for months, and you'll know there's a tom working that area.
Well, so that's what George Hobbs out in New Mexico showed me that out there. I'd never seen any lion sign at all, and it's pretty interesting to see. But yeah, awesome. Wild country, wildcats, and hounds. What could be better than that, right?
Can't beat it. Good horse to ride, you really can't beat it.
Right. Well, what about the future What about the future of lion hunting out there in Arizona? What do you think?
Well, the thing about politically, animal rights tried to get lion hunting on the ballot here in Arizona in 2018, and luckily they backed out and didn't get it on the ballot. I think that if they do come back and get it on the ballot, we're in a lot of trouble here. We probably won't be lion hunting in Arizona anymore. And our main problem is we've got two huge population centers in Phoenix and Tucson, and they hate lion hunters. I mean, basically, they hate they hate all hunting, basically, And if somebody like the Humane Society runs a good campaign against us, we're in a lot of trouble. We probably won't be lion hunting here anymore. And,
does Arizona have a strong hound organization that's on point for that sort of stuff?
No, unfortunately, we don't. We got one, and it ain't much. So that's what I say. I just think that we're, hound hunting is so unpopular. I saw a thing recently in Utah of all states, where it's extremely unpopular in Utah. So, I mean, Arizona, where we have huge population centers that pretty well dictate, politics in the whole state, Phoenix and Tucson decide the whole state of Arizona. I think we're in a lot of trouble, but
it's amazing to me how big some of the counties in Arizona are. I mean, you look at what's Flagstaff, Coconino County out there?
Coconino. Yep.
Yeah, Coconino County. I mean, that's like half the state of Indiana. And and it's all based on population. I often think what it would be like to be the sheriff of Coconino County, and I can't even imagine that. So what's the nobody is organizing or trying to get organized right now, because they're going to come back. The HSUS just, a lot of times they put things out there just as a trial run to see what they need to do to armor up and come back the next round. So what's your feelings on that?
Well, to your point, yeah, I kind of have to believe that's what they did this time. They just wanted to feel things out because they put very little money into their campaign, almost nothing. And then they backed out and just said, okay, fine. They walked away from it. But everybody I talk to believes the same as I do. They're going to come back. Right. And I think what we needed to do, and we tried at one point, was to get a ballot initiative deal to where it had to pass with the 3/4 majority on wildlife issues. And we never got it done. Utah did that, and that's probably going to help Utah for quite a while. But Arizona, we didn't do that. And I think the problem we're having, if you look at the politics in Arizona right now, I don't think we could ever do that now. Because if you tried to go through the legislature, our legislature is getting pretty close to 50-50, Democrat, Republican. And they're not going to let something like that go. There's just no way in the world.
Well,
personally, I think that would have been our only chance, personally.
In Michigan in 1996, and we had Mike Thorman on earlier with the Michigan Hunting Dog Federation, we faced a referendum on bear hunting and over bait. In other words, stop bear hunting with hounds and stop bear hunting with bait. What we did is we countered with and it was called Proposition D, as in dog, and it was on the ballot. And so we countered with what we call Proposition G, and G for good. And the idea was Proposition G said that the management of the wildlife resource would be under the charge of the experts, the people, the biologists with the Department of Natural Resources, and take a scientific approach rather than a legislative approach to regulating the wildlife resource. And we kind of countered when they came at us with the bill to stop our hound hunting. We countered with a bill to put the management in the hands of the experts, because we knew that they were going to be on our side, because it makes sense, to manage the wildlife resource with the use of dogs. So maybe something like that could work in Arizona. But I think that the bottom line is there's going to have to be an organization, and some hunters are going to have to step up, and there's going to have to be some trips made to the Capitol and to lobby some of these legislators and so forth. But it's a tough fight all over the United States, and that's one of the reasons that Chris and I started this podcast, and perhaps the main reason is to try to create awareness of the situation in the different states, that hound hunting, whether you hunt beagles or rabbits with beagles, or coyotes with foxhounds, or coon or bear or mountain lion or wild hogs, and I could go on, you are under the gun. You are your sport is in peril, and if we don't step up and wake up and stand up, we're going to lose this. And we've spent an hour and a half here talking about a wonderful sport, something that I certainly hope to do before I'm too old to enjoy it. I've never walked up to a tree or a bay with a mountain lion. I've hunted virtually everything you can think of with hounds, but I want to do that. And it's good, and it's something that every houndsman should be able to enjoy. So I sure hope that some people out there in your part of the world, Chris, are listening and get a fire for this thing and say, you know what, we need to organize. We need to protect this thing.
Yeah, I hope so. We've got the, I'm going to mispronounce them because I'm a member of them, but I'm going to mispronounce them. Arizonans for Wildlife Conservation, I believe, is the name of the group. And they're doing a lot of good work. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're doing a lot of good work. Where I'm afraid is that if it ever reaches the ballot, then we're done. That's what I'm afraid of, if it ever gets that far. And this organization helped stop it from getting to the ballot by going to the legislature right before the signature gathering process began for the Humane Society. And they made a few changes and made it more difficult for them. But I still believe that the Humane Society just didn't want to put the money into a big fight right now for some reason. I have no idea, but for some reason. And as far as the putting the management of wildlife into the hands of in our case, the Arizona Game and Fish Department, we did that. Oh man, I don't know. Time flies. It's probably been 10 years ago. We tried that about 10 years ago. We had it on the ballot, and it was turned down. And the part that really got me now, with looking back on it, is that our Arizona Game and Fish Department didn't support it. They didn't like it. And so, when you got the Arizona Game and Fish Department, I don't know what they did. I don't know exactly what their thinking was, but when you got them saying, no, we don't want the power, well, then the public's going to say, well, evidently, we don't want to do this, so they voted it down. And to me, something like that would have been the way to go. And I've talked to a lot of guys that have said the same thing, and, but I really believe, as far as going through our legislature, it's getting a little too late for that, because of the fact that Arizona's going more and more liberal all the time. Our legislature is getting more and more liberal all the time. And you're just not going to, when you got the Humane Society calling all them people and telling them, don't vote for this, vote against it, well, then you're probably not going to be able to get that through the legislature. So
for
it's
sure.
getting tough, and you're right. People are going to, it's just when you listen to the logic of people in the Humane Society, and they don't have any logic basically. So
right.
those are the people that you're fighting. So it's going to be tougher and tougher.
Right. Well, when lions start going into the subdivisions in Phoenix and Tucson and picking up the little Yorkies and kitty cats and so forth, then maybe they'll get the message. But well, I sure wish you good luck with that situation out there. We're certainly going to spread the word as much as we can to the houndsmen across the country that they need to get busy, be aware, be proactive, not reactive. Hey, once again, Chris, give us the website. Let's say that someone wants to come out and do a lion hunt with you. What time of year is the best time?
Pretty much, I schedule hunts from October 1st through the end of April. And, people call me and say, hey, what's the weather going to be like? Well, that's 6 months from now. I don't know what to tell you, you just, basically, you have to just say, okay, what does my schedule allow, and book a hunt, and we'll go from there. And really any of those, anywhere in there is good. It really is. I mean, I can catch a line for somebody anywhere in that time frame. And it is just a guess as to weather, and I'll tell you what, this past year, our weather was so different than normal. I had a couple hunts planned scheduled for October last year, and we basically got rained out the whole month of October. I never seen anything like it. Usually October is a nice, dry, warm month in Arizona, but it just rained and rained and rained. Just kept raining on us. So it makes it tough.
Steve, can I jump in?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I watched one of your videos on your website, and you said it was cold. I said, man, it's terrible cold. What is terrible cold for Kingman, Arizona?
Well, terrible cold for us is anything below freezing, but I think I gave the temperature there, but I can't remember it. During that time, it was running about, a little under 20 most mornings, and
yeah.
And you know what I find, though? People that come from back east, they say it's a different kind of cold here. I don't know if the air is drier and it's colder or exactly what it is. But
I've been colder in Bear Branch,
cold.
Indiana. I've been colder in Bear Branch, Indiana, 30 degrees than I have been in, like Condon, Montana at minus 22. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Just damp and nasty.
Right. Well, Chris, you also sell puppies from time to time. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do sell pups every now and then. Yeah.
I see. Do you have any now?
No, actually, I had 3 litters of puppies this year, and sold them all except like 2 of them, and sold the rest of them. But they're all gone. Usually, I breed in the springtime when I'm pretty much done guiding hunts and stuff like that. Then I don't like my females. I've got a lot of really good female lion hounds, and I don't want to tie them up during the winter with puppies. So if I'm going to breed them, it's going to be when I'm pretty well done hunting,
right?
Or at least the serious hunting's over. And the hunters are all done and stuff in the springtime.
Sure. Do you ship at all? Do you ship?
Yeah, I've shipped them. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, give us that website one more time, so that our listeners know how to get in touch with you.
Okay, it's azlinehunts.com. Real simple, azlinehunts.com.
Okay. And
easy to find. I found it myself.
Well, Chris, you've been a delightful guest. We have enjoyed so much talking with you today, learned a lot of stuff about lion hunting. I'm sure just enough to be dangerous. But got my juices flowing for sure to get out there on one of those horses. I guess does riding that little mechanical horse in front of Walmart, will that help me get ready, or do I need
probably
to get
not?
More serious? Okay, well, we got all these theme parks here in Florida with a lot of carousels and all that. But anyway, it's been a great visit. Do you have anything that you'd like to add, Chris Todd, that we haven't discussed with you that you'd like to mention before we wrap this up?
No, not really. I would just like for people to know that anybody listening that I didn't get a chance to say, or we didn't get that far to say that I've done a lot of hunting in the snow and stuff like that. So I know what snow hunting is like, and I dry ground line hunt on horseback, and it's just two completely different hunts. I mean, you can go on all the snow hunts you want to go on and come out here and hunt on horseback and dry ground, and it's just completely different. So that's what I do. I love it. It's tough hunting. If you're thinking about taking a hunt here, it is a tough hunt. It's not easy. I mean, it'll try you most of the time. By the time you get here, between getting sore and getting up in the morning and riding 20 miles, following dogs and stuff. But it's to me personally, it's a lot more of a hunt than going out in the snow is. It's a lot more of a hunt. So that's basically all I wanted to say. Like I say, that's what I'm all about, is the dry ground line hunting, and it's just a super great sport. To me, it's the best sport there is by far. And I wanted to say to you and Chris, thank you very much for allowing me to try to talk a little bit about dry ground line hunting. Anyway, thank you guys.
That's a pleasure.
Well, it's been our pleasure for sure, Chris, and I appreciate you coming on with us on short notice. And I know you've got a trip planned out of state for a couple of weeks of hunting, and I wish you great success and good luck out there. And hopefully we'll get you back on the podcast another day, and we can share some of those great line hunting stories with you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Well, Steve, you always wrap this thing up with your famous line. Let's have it.
Well, Chris, we're going to turn loose on this lion here. We've got this big tom scrape here that Chris Todd has showed us. And when we cut these hounds loose, you follow your hound and I'll follow mine.